Hello, my friends. Here we are once again, Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. You are on Kardec Radio. This is our weekly program, Spiritism, a closer look. Luiz Lima here, broadcasting from Orlando, Florida. Tonight, we are going to take a closer look at life and death. The idea behind, or the reason, let's put it this way, the reason why we chose to do this topic this week, it has to do with last week's presentation on abortion. And among other things, we had to bring up the idea of defining life. Where does life begin? Because it's really important for abortion uh, to analyze the situation. And we found out that in order to define life, you kind of have to define death because they go along together. And, we didn't care about death at the time because that wasn't part of the subject. So tonight we want to take a closer look at both. We're going to look at life, life starting and life ending, what we call death. Let's see what the spiritist view is for those two things. I want to present you two slides. I want to do in graphic form because I think it's going to be just easier to grasp the idea. So what you see here is the first slide. This is a slide showing the results of a survey. Survey was, you can see on the lower left of the slide, it was a survey took place throughout 5 years from 2017 to 2022. And the purpose of this survey was to find out which countries believed in life after death. So there was a question on the survey: do you believe in life after death? And what you see on the bottom of the map, you see the coloring scheme and the percents of each country. But the numbers, the percents are also written on each country, most of them. So we found something very interesting here. The countries where life after death is almost like believed by almost the entire population are Islamic countries, are countries that are in the Middle East or North Africa. You can see Morocco, Libya, Iran, and also Turkey, Iran. And then it's interesting because from the Islamic point of view, and we know that, they do expect rewards after life, depending if they did a good life or so. So there's a tremendous belief. Okay. Here in the US, 68%. Canada, 56%. And there are countries where this percent is very low, the lowest of all being China, with only 11.5% of the population believing that there is life after death. For me personally, that was a little bit surprising that China is so low. Anyhow, so you see, life after death is not seen by everyone the same way. Au contraire, it's a lot of variations throughout the world. If people don't believe in life after death, some believe more, some believe less. The idea of dying is not the same for everyone. Those who believe in that life after death see death in a way. The others do not, see in a different way. So there is no consensus here. It's very hard to get to a consensus because there isn't one. This is throughout the world. This research was conducted for 5 years throughout the world. Now, in the US, we have a very interesting research, and you can see the source on the lower right of the slide. It's very, very, very interesting. It's a long survey. It's a beautiful research. 5 pages of results and graphics and tables. Anyhow, we're gonna take we're gonna do a summary of what the survey tells us, a brief summary. So the question is, in the U.S., okay, do you believe in heaven and hell? Well, let me show you what the answers were. 61% of the responders said, yeah, I believe in both heaven and hell. 26% said, I believe in none of them. No heaven, no hell. 26%. Another 13% said, I believe in heaven only, not hell. And 1% said, I believe in hell only, not heaven. It's an interesting perspective that you have all four types of variations here. Now, for those who responded within the blue, which is the 26%, they got an additional question. And the question was, you're telling me you don't believe in heaven or hell, as in the classic concept. Do you believe in the afterlife? So out of those, 65% said, no, I do not believe in afterlife. 27% said, yes, I believe in afterlife. It's very interesting. Right? So most people here believe in no heaven, no hell, and no afterlife, nothing at all. Now, there's 27% in there who believed in some form of afterlife. And those got another question. And the question was, tell us about afterlife. What do you think it is? You see, when the question was, do you believe in the afterlife, on the research, they did not tell what afterlife was. Each person took the question their own way. So once they said yes to afterlife, then the question was, well, tell us what you think it is. 42% couldn't respond. They couldn't tell us a clear definition of what it is, what this afterlife that they believe in could be. No response, almost half, 42%. 21% said, well, the spirit, we're using the word spirit / energy because it doesn't depend on the belief system. Some people call the spirit, some people call energy, whatever the word is. But 21% said, yeah, the spirit or the energy lives on. So there's some sort of continuation. 17% said, not only we believe that they live on, but they come back. There's reincarnation. There is such a thing as reincarnation. 17%. 11% said afterlife is peace. The spirit or the energy just goes to a very peaceful place and stays in there. And finally, 17% said, well, they just rejoined the universe. That's interesting because we as spiritists, we are those in the bottom part of the screen, we are those 17% who believe in reincarnation, we believe in afterlife, and we don't believe in heaven and hell in the classic sense, the classic concept. That's us right there. But this is, it puts us things in context. You see, there's a total mix of ideas and responses and doubts, and it's very hard to have any type of consensus when it comes to what is death. Even science cannot define very clearly. We discussed that last week in 1 minute, so we're going to do a little more today here. Life, as we mentioned before, starts from the spiritist point of view, starts at the conception. So when the sperm hits the boundary of the egg, several of them do, only one penetrates. When the penetration starts, you start timing it. It takes 4 minutes for that sperm to make it all the way into the center of the egg. At the center of the egg, it's gonna a fusion between the male and the female nuclei is gonna take place. That fusion takes 15 minutes, and right after that, that's when the fluidic tie from the incarnating spirit attaches to matter. So we discussed that last week. So it takes about 19 minutes or so for the spirit to be able to attach its through a fluidic tie, its perispirit to the material elements. That's life. Now, the problem is not defining life. The problem is defining death. We got to think about this way. Death is not seen the same way by incarnates, us, and discarnates. It's like, for example, let's say I'm walking away from you into a portal, for example, into a door, and there's somebody waiting for me at the door. The way you see it, me going away from you, is not the same thing that the other person sees me coming closer and closer. It's two different things. If you and that person had to describe what they see, it would be completely different, because your description would be something like this: he's walking away from me, he's getting further and further. The other person would say he's coming over to where I am, he's getting closer and closer. And that's almost contradictory. So that tells you that we incarnate spirits don't see the act of dying the same way that discarnates do. And even worse, they don't call death. We call death. They call discarnation. But between death and discarnation, there's some sort of elapsed time. They are not the same thing. It's a process. So there's a time frame that takes place between what we call death and what they call discarnation. How do we see that? How do we measure that? We can't measure. We can't measure. Science does not have any equipment, any machine, any meters per se that will be able to tell us how long it took, or even if the spirit is still attached to the dying body or the dead body per se. Sometimes the spirit, the person dies for all purposes from science definition of dying. We're going to talk about it shortly. But the perispirit of the dead spirit per se is still attached to its body. So discarnation and death are not the same thing. There is an elapsed time between death and discarnation. And let's go back a little bit in time and see how we define death. Because the definition of death changes throughout time drastically. Well, for example, let's go back to the caveman days, okay? 5,000 years ago, 6,000 years ago. When would we define that somebody is dead? Well, most likely we would look at the person, let's just say lying down, and no movement, nothing. That person's not doing anything for a day, maybe two, and we consider, oh, that's gone. Person is dead. It's not coming back. It's not going to move it around anymore. That's it. So you would take time to declare, to assume and declare that the person is dead. Later on, with time, the first studies in medicine, still way before Jesus, the idea of breathing. So somebody lies down. You don't know if the person is dead or not. So you can just, put your hands really close to the nose and try to feel if there's any air blowing. That would be okay at the time to define if the person is dead or not. And it's much better than wait to see if the person wakes up from the floor. It's better, but still very, very, very uh, a total inability to define correctly. Then the next thing is with these studies of medicine and technology, heart activity. So now the person dropped on the floor. I don't know if the person is dead, so I'm going to put my ear really close to the person's chest and try to hear the heartbeat. If I do, person is still alive. If I don't, I can wait for a few seconds, maybe a minute or two, and nothing comes out. I'm going to declare person is dead. You see how this is changing across time because of our knowledge. We have more knowledge, so now we're not waiting to see if the person wakes up anymore. No, we're going to check the heart. We can try to hear the heartbeat. Then we go into a more technological days where now we have a stethoscope, little thing that the doctor puts on the ear and listens to our heart. So sometimes my ears on the chest of the supposedly dead person might not be enough for me to detect if there's a heartbeat. The stethoscope is a much better tool because it picks up really any kind of noise, regardless of the noise in the surroundings that will interfere, of course, with my judgment. So the stethoscope changes everything. Now, there's going to be a point where the stethoscope is not enough because it still depends on the years of the person who has the stethoscope. Could be a nurse, could be a doctor, whoever it is. So you depend still on the ability that the person has to hear well, and that's not enough. So we came up with the next step, which is the electrocardiogram, ECG. ECG is those machines that shows, the heartbeat as pulses on a screen. If the person dies and the equipment flatlines for a while, okay, a while depends a little bit on the situation of the person, but if it flatlines, okay, we can consider that person is gone, is dead. However, we found out this is not all, because the person can flatline on the equipment, so heartbeat, no heartbeat, but the brain is still producing something. There's still activity in the brain that can be detected with an electroencephalogram, right? EEG detects brain waves, so you can have a flatlined ECG and you can still have activity in the brain. So you see how complicated it's becoming to define death. Death now is longer than expected. Before the person drops, that's it. Now it's complicated to define exactly where the person is dead. And now the current standards for science to declare or medicine to declare somebody is dead is what we call brain death. So there is nothing, everything is flatlined. ECG is flatlined, EEG is flatlined, that's it. Then a person is gone. And it seems to be okay from the scientific point of view. However, how many cases don't we have of people who flatlined everything? So you can declare death according to the medical standards, death. And then a few minutes later, maybe an hour later, the person comes back. That happens a lot in surgery and operation rooms. The person comes back because that person just had an NDE, near-death experience. and it will come back and it will tell us everything that they saw on the other side and what was happening in the operation room, in the surgery room, what the doctor said, what they tried to do, what they were wearing, doing, how they were moving, everything, absolutely everything. So then the question is, was the person dead? You see how complicated it is to define death. And even if there is no near-death experience, so the person flatlined in after, let's just say, 3 days, and there's no way, 3 days, that's it. Now the person is really, really gone. Now, how about discarnating? Is the spirit disconnected from the body already, yes or no? We don't know. We cannot know. However, the spirits on the discarnate side, they will know. And that's what they go by to define a person has completed their cycle on earth. You see, our standard to complete the cycle on earth is the brain death. Theirs is not. Theirs is the perispirit now is totally free. There is no physical body attached anymore. And that could take, between one and the other, it could take minutes, hours, months, years. We have cases, we know of cases where the spirit was and is still attached to the body after 100 years. Reported by mediumistic meetings and mediums, and just goes on and on and on. So there's a clash here between the definition of death from the scientific point of view and from the spiritist point of view, considering that the spiritist point of view looks from the what the discarnates tells us. One very interesting thing that I want to show you here, I want to show you the cover of this book here. It's called The Quantum Self. It's written by this physicist, Dana Zohar. She's got a bachelor's degree in physics and philosophy from the MIT. She also did a lot of postgraduate studies in philosophy and religion at Harvard. So, it's quite an achievement there. And the book, The Quantum Self, is the name of the book. The book is about understanding how understanding the insights of modern physics and how they can contribute to understand daily life. That's what the book is all about. Again, it's written for a person from the physics point of view, but there's a touch of philosophy too. There is one phrase in this book which I think summarizes beautifully everything. The one phrase is very short phrase. The one phrase is, at the subatomic level of elementary particles, there is no death in the sense of a permanent loss. You see, so when we look at the body as a whole, a macro view of the body, you will die. But when you go into the micro view, all the cells and atoms, they can't die because the subatomic particles, meaning under the level of the atom, they don't die. They don't have a heart, a brain. So there is no death in that sense. This is very interesting. This is coming from a scientist. Very, very interesting. So there is no death in the sense of a permanent loss. What we have is transformation. Transformation. So death is not the same for us and science. I could go ahead and say this. For science, death is an ending point. That's it. And finished. For Spiritism, death is a point of reference. Is a point of reference. Okay, this cycle ended. Now the new cycle is going to start. It's a point of reference. That's all it is. Right? That's a very interesting thing. And how can we solidify the idea that for us spiritists, there is no death in the sense of, you know, the same sense of science. It's just a point of reference. We have information from mediumship. We have several cases of near-death experiences. We have several studies done by incarnate spirits using information from discarnate spirits on the perispirits. We have past life regression. All of these things, they can give us insight on death, meaning the act of dying. It's not viewed the same thing by us incarnates and them discarnates. Same for life. Life, when does life begin? All right, so we did this last week when we spoke about abortion. So I encourage you to go back to our videos of last week and take a look at it. Well, thank you very much for your participation today. Spiritism, a closer look. Don't forget, we are here every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So we'll see you next time. Be well. Thank you.